Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess. Today we are doing the mid-year freakout tag, and I am a little late to this because it is about the end of June as I'm filming this. It is literally June 30th today. So insert the obligatory, I can't believe it's been 6 months, I can't believe we're halfway through the year comments here, because yes, it is halfway through the year. So let's get into the questions. I did base my questions off of the ones that by Sid used in her video. They are slightly different than the normal questions. It's mostly the same, but just a couple taken out and a couple added in here and there. If you are interested in doing the mid-year freakout tag yourself, there are lots of videos online. You could go find other questions as well, or you can look in the description box of this video. I will have all the questions that I'm doing in there with timestamps as well. So the first question is, how is your reading year going so far? And so far I have read 34 books this year for a total of 10,435 pages, which seems like a lot more than last year, and it actually is more than last year. I did go grab my old reading journal from last year so I can compare how much I read this year at the midway point to last year at the midway point. At the midway point last year, I had read 36 books, which is 2 more than this year. But the number of pages I read last year was 8,841 and 106.8 hours of audiobook time. This year, I have like 4 hours of audiobook time. I completely fell off from audiobooks this year for some reason. Last year, I had a very different type of job where I could listen to audiobooks at work. So I was listening to more of them than I am now because I can't listen to audio or music or anything at work anymore. Honestly, those 106 hours probably translate to a couple thousand pages. So I think at the midpoint this year versus last year, I'm pretty much the same. It's about the same, which is nice to see because it means that I am consistent in at least one thing in my life anyway. Now we're going to be getting into the questions that are directly about books that I read. If I have videos where I talked about these books more at length, I will put them in the description and in the cards above. If you want to hear more in depth about any of these books, I encourage you to go watch those videos, not just to plug my own stuff, but also because I'm probably just going to gloss over things pretty quickly. So with that disclaimer out of the way, the next question is, what is the best book you've read this year? Naturally, I couldn't pick just one, so I have 2 books to talk about. The first book I'm going to talk about, I read all the way back in January, which was crazy. I had my best book of the year, or one of my best books of the year, at the very beginning of the year, and that is Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino. I talked about this one very in depth all the way back in January in my January wrap-up. I kind of went off on a huge tangent talking about how much I loved it in that wrap-up, so I encourage you to go check that out. This one is a contemporary lit fic following our main character Adina. We literally follow her from the moment of her birth throughout her entire life. Adina believes that she is an alien who was sent down from her people into a human body to observe and gather information about humans, and the way that she reports back to them is through a fax machine that her mother picks up off the side of the road, and she starts sending all of her studies and information to the aliens, and she gets responses back. The whole story is just following her as she's observing humans and observing our behavior in the way that we go through life, the things that are kind of considered normal and that we don't question, but she heavily questions, obviously, and her sending these faxes back and forth with her people. And it's just a very interesting story that I don't really know how to explain the plot of, because there really isn't a plot to be seen. It's very, very much just a character study, and you're just existing in this character's mind. Hello. And following Adina through her life as she grows and as she gets older, trying to navigate all these complicated human emotions and relationships, and talking about what it means to be human and what defines humanity from basically the perspective of an outsider as an alien, but also an insider as someone who looks human. So it's very interesting, and I really, really loved following Adina. I just think she's so fascinating. She's such an interesting character and very complex. The story has so many interesting themes as well around family dynamics, racial identity, belonging, queer identity as well, as she's exploring her sexuality. It's just a very, very captivating experience, and as much as it is just like a slow kind of exploration of someone's life, it's just very captivating, and I really, really loved following this character. I loved being in her head. I loved seeing the way that she views the world, and I really kind of felt hollow after finishing this because I was like, what am I going to read now? How is anything going to stand up to this, you know? I don't think this will necessarily be for everybody, but I think that if you really enjoy complex characters and you like an interesting perspective, an interesting take on the world, and you enjoy something kind of literary, I think you would enjoy this. And spoiler alert, this book will come back up in a later question, so I'm going to put her to the side. The next book I'm going to talk about I read much more recently, but I do not remember what month it was, so that video will be linked. It'll be somewhere. And that is On Sundays She Picked Flowers by Yaya Schofield, I believe. I think I said Schofield the first time I talked about it. I believe it's Schofield, but correct me if I'm wrong. This one, let me tell you, she's short, but she packs a hell of a punch. This one is a historical horror fantasy, and it follows our main character Judith as she is escaping a very, very toxic and very damaging family dynamic. Following a really, really terrible confrontation with her mother, who is abusive to her, she gets in her car and just sets off driving to anywhere else. She ends up finding her way to this very small town in southern Georgia. She ends up moving into this abandoned property that's very deep in the swampy forest. It has a really, really wonderful atmosphere, very lush and botanical, but also rotting and swampy, and I just absolutely love the atmosphere of this. This property that she is now living on was formerly a plantation and is very haunted by the spirits of those who died there. However, Judith, she ain't afraid of no ghost.
I ain't afraid of no ghost.
And she just moves right in. I don't know about just moves right in, it kind of puts her through the ringer. There's a pretty substantial time skip in the middle of this after she gets settled in, and we end up picking back up where she meets this mysterious woman who shows up to her house in the middle of the night just asking for a place to stay. And things get really weird, and I love this book. Oh my god, it is so interesting. It's so layered because there is this horror aspect, obviously, that's kind of front and center, but there's also these family dynamics that are equally haunting and equally terrifying. Generational trauma is a huge thing in this, as well as discussions about slavery, because this is set in the 60s, right after segregation has ended. And the characters in this are very much still suffering the effects of that, and how that has kind of trickled down to Judith and her family. And it's just so heavy to read, like the things that happen in this book and the things that have happened in the past to these characters, and the things that have gone into shaping this family dynamic, this terrible, toxic environment for Judith. I will say definitely check the trigger warnings for this. I will say that with any horror pretty much, but I really, really loved this. It was just such a wonderful read. Completely different than my other favorite of the year, but wonderful in some really twisted, gross ways, and I just loved it. Highly recommend. The next question is, what is the best sequel you've read this year? And I'm gonna say The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. This is book 2 in the Broken Earth series. The first one is the 5th season, and then the third one is The Stone Sky. I read the 5th season last year. I don't remember if I talked about it in a video, but I did talk about this one in a video, and I will link that. Obviously, since this one is the second book in a series, I can't tell you too much about this one in particular, but the 5th season, the first book, I really, really loved it. And it was one of my best books of the year last year. This year, I did read both of the sequels, and I definitely prefer The Obelisk Gate over The Stone Sky. I think this one is stronger as a sequel than that one is, but they're both very solid, and I really love this series. Just to extremely briefly introduce this world, it is a post-apocalyptic climate sci-fi, and it features a type of magic called orogeny that uses the raw geothermal energy of the earth, and the people that are able to use it are called orogenes. But in this universe, orogeny is very, very stigmatized, and so orogenes face a lot of discrimination, a lot of subjugation and death and ostracization from their communities. So it does focus heavily on those themes, as well as themes of family dynamics. If you're sensing a theme with the books that I've read this year, apparently, there's a lot of family dynamics at play here. But one of the stories we had in the first book was a mother trying to find her daughter who has been taken away from her, and that kind of story continues to play out throughout the series. So I really recommend this series. It is very complex, and it's a bit complicated to get into. The world building is very, very deep, but it's really, really good, and the magic system is very interesting, and definitely something unique for the genre. I have gained an assistant. This is Mochi, for those of you who have not met him, but now that he's joined us and settled in, we can get into the next question, which is, what was the book that you had the most fun reading? This one was super easy for me to answer, and that is Of Monsters and Mainframes by Barbara Truelove. Sorry, I'll hold it over here so I'm not blocking Mochi, because of course you need to see him. Clearly you guys came for the star of the show, Mochi. You guys aren't here for books, right? So this book I talked about in depth in a couple different videos. I do not remember which ones, but they will be linked for your viewing leisure. This one was such a fun, campy, silly, goofy time. Our main character is a spaceship AI called Demeter, and she has found herself piloting a ship full of dead people because someone came on board and killed all her humans, and that somebody is Dracula. What follows is a very Scooby-Doo, like Monster of the Week type of story where we get introduced to all these different characters from classic monster tales. They've all been given like a fun, shiny sci-fi makeover, and we just follow this extremely campy adventure of Demeter and her newfound family trying to track down and kill Dracula. And that is Of Monsters and Mainframes. It is as silly and wacky as it sounds. This one actually ended up being one of my top 3 of the year with Beautyland and on Sundays she picked flowers. I had such a fun time reading this. It's just such a weird, fun experience. How many synonyms for fun and wacky can I say in this segment? I think you get the idea. The next question is, what is a new release you want to read but haven't yet? I actually have 3 I'm going to talk about, and the first one is The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. I did have this on my TBR shelf, so I just grabbed it. This is a fantasy, and I believe it's a expansion of her short story, The Six Deaths of the Saint, or it's kind of like a spin on that in a novel form. I loved The Six Deaths of the Saint. I actually had it in one of my top books of last year, even though it's like 30-something pages. It was phenomenal. So I'm really looking forward to this one. However, I'm kind of avoiding it because I'm scared that I'm not going to like it as much as Six Deaths of the Saint. I don't have the next 2, so I'll just put up photos on the side, but one of them is The Poet Empress. Everybody's been talking about The Poet Empress. I would really, really love to read that one at some point, but I'm kind of waiting to see if I can pick up an Illumicrate copy of it on Pango for a reasonable price. I love the Illumicrate copy, and if I'm going to buy it, I want that version. I just want to find it for a good deal. And the next one is Platform Decay. This is the newest book in the Murderbot series, which I've read all of. I really, really love the Murderbot series, and I'm so excited to read the next entry. I don't know if she has more entries planned, but I cannot wait to pick this one up. I'm really excited to see what Murderbot gets up to in this entry. I love the whole series. I haven't watched the TV show yet. If you have, let me know what you thought of it. I just wasn't super huge on the casting of Murderbot, to be honest. That's why I've been avoiding it. The next question is, what are your most anticipated releases for the second half of the year? And I have 3. The first one is Rotten Heart by Kat Dunn. I cannot remember off the top of my head what this one is about, but I have loved Kat Dunn's works. I loved Bitterthorn. I loved Hungerstone. Both of those are 5-star reads for me, so I'm really excited to see what Rotten Heart will bring. The next one is Milk Teeth by Caitlin Starling. I really loved The Starving Saints by this author, and the whole idea of this like vampire broodmother situation who has to raise fledgling vampires is just so cool. I really, really want the UK version of this because I love the cover. The US cover does absolutely nothing for me. And the last one is As You Wake, Break the Shell by Becky Chambers. You guys know, if you've been here before, you know I'm a Becky Chambers fan. I love her works. I am so, so, so excited for this one. I love the cover of it as well. It's just so whimsical and fun. So I'm really, really excited for that one. I'm really excited for all 3 of these. The next question is, what is the worst book you read this year? This one I'm not going to talk about for very long, obviously, because I don't want to get into it. But my answer for this one is going to be The Infinity Particle, which is a YA graphic novel. I believe it was May that I read this, and I talked about it more in my May wrap-up, so I will link that as well. I don't really want to talk about this one very much, but I just had a lot of issues with it. The art is great. I really love the art, but unfortunately the art was kind of the only thing I liked about it, so that was the worst book that I read this year. The next question, kind of following with this negative vibe, is the biggest disappointment of the year. Some of you are not going to like this answer, but it is Parable of the Sower. I know, boo, tomato, tomato.
Lame, boo, tomato, 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 I'm throwing tomato.
I know. I know I have an unpopular opinion on this. I talked about this one in the same wrap-up as The Infinity Particle, so just go watch that if you want to hear about both of those. And I do break down my reasons for why I didn't like it, but basically to kind of summarize the reasons. I found a lot of the world building and plotting to be very inconsistent, and the first half of the book was a lot stronger than the second half. There was a lot of tonal inconsistencies in the first half versus the second half. I didn't resonate at all with the themes of religion and spirituality that were in this, and I found that a lot of the story beats pertaining to the religion, especially in the second half, I just felt that it completely lacked any weight or depth, I suppose. Like I said, I know that's probably a disappointing take for some of you, but unfortunately it was a disappointing read for me. The next question is, who is your favorite new author? And that could be new to me or a debut author. The author I'm going to end up going with is a debut author, and that is Yaya Schofield, who wrote On Sunday She Picked Flowers. I was just so enraptured by this book that I cannot wait for anything else that they write. I will be seated, well, standing at the bookstore in line the next time they have any release. So Yaya Schofield is definitely the new author for me. The next question is, what is a book that made you cry? And I don't cry easily, I feel, when I'm reading. I cry a lot in my normal everyday life. Like I cry at movies, I cry at games. I don't know why I don't cry as much with reading. Maybe I'm just not reading very sad books. But this one I did actually have an answer for. And I told you that this one would be back. It's Beautyland. I don't remember if I cried while reading this, but I definitely cried right after finishing this. I remember finishing this, putting it down, and just kind of walking around in a ghost-like state, just feeling empty. And I think I put my head up against the wall at one point and just started crying. I just didn't know what to do with myself after finishing this. I don't know, something about just finishing the story and not being with Adina anymore. It just like, I was just so invested and it was such a heartfelt experience. I don't know, I cried right after finishing it. The next question is, what are some books you want to read by the end of the year? And I have 3. Shocker, I know. So the 3 books that I have as an answer for this, I have picked because they've been on my TBR the longest. These are 3 books that have been on my TBR for at least a year, maybe a year and a half. And I bought them and they've been on my shelf for a long time as well. So I really want to read these before they have their 2nd birthday on my TBR. And the first one is The Blighted Stars by Megan O'Keefe. I did technically start it, but I have not made any progress really. I'm like 20 pages into it. It is the first book in a sci-fi trilogy and it's the Devoured Worlds trilogy. It's pretty like hard sci-fi from what I've gathered so far. I usually tend to gravitate towards the like soft sci-fi, like the Becky Chambers type of sci-fi, but so far I am intrigued by this one. The next one is Asunder by Kirsten Hall. This one is fantasy and I've heard it comped as a more fantasy version of Gideon the Ninth. It follows a death speaker who is locked into a compact with a terrifying eldritch being who has granted her the ability to communicate with the newly departed. And I think she uses her ability to communicate with the dead to investigate some kind of mystery. It sounds really, really interesting and I've heard great things about it, but it seems pretty underground. Like there's not a whole lot of reviews or ratings for this one. I am hoping it lives up to the comparison to Gideon the Ninth. We shall see. And the next one is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. Yes, there are tabs and a bookmark in here because I started it a couple months ago and then I soft DNF'd it just because I wasn't ready to start a new series by N.K. Jemisin until I finished the previous series that I was reading, which was the Broken Earth trilogy. So I temporarily put this one down, picked up The Stone Sky, read that one, and now I feel like I can go into a new series by her. This one is the first in a sci-fi urban fantasy duology, and I am very, very confused from the first couple chapters that I read. It is wild. It's a wild experience, but I didn't expect anything less from N.K. Jemisin. The world building and the magic system in this is just completely batshit because basically cities have an avatar, like a person who is the city, like they're the essence of the city, they have the magic of the city, I suppose. It says every great city has a soul. Some are ancient as myths, others are new and destructive as children. New York, she's got 6. And so it's just gonna be a wild time. I'm just ready to get my mind absolutely blown by this author again. So at some point I will pick this one back up and get into where I left off. The next 2 questions are more about the channel as a whole and about videos. I believe these are questions that Sid might have added, but I'm not sure if she got them from somewhere else. The first one is, what is my favorite video that I've made this year? Honestly, I've really been enjoying my Bewitch or Ditch series, which I do need to start another episode of. Maybe I'll start today, actually. It's a read it or unhaul it style challenge with a cauldron of TBR prompts, and I love doing them. They're so much fun. But I guess as my answer to this question, I will say Bewitch or Ditch episode 3, just because that's the most recent one, so I will link that as well. I do explain all the rules at the beginning of each episode, so you don't have to watch them all, but if you want to go watch them all, I encourage you to, of course. Please give me all the view time for my channel, thank you. And the next question is, what are some upcoming videos that you're planning for the rest of the year? So one of them is going to be a follow-up to my most niche books recommendation video, which was several months ago at this point. I got inspired to do that initial video from my friend Elise from Elise's Reading. Sorry, I hope this is the same angle as before. I ran out of storage, so I had to make some room. But ever since that first niche book recommendations video, I've been accruing a new list of books that I've been reading that are under like 6,000 ratings, and I think I have maybe 7 or 8 of them at this point. So at some point, you will see an episode 2 of most niche recommendations. Speaking of recommendations, I am also going to be working on a weirdly specific book recommendations video. I've seen a lot of them around where people submit their prompts, and it's something like incredibly specific, something like a horror featuring a female protagonist with mommy issues, like incredibly specific prompts, you know? So I got a ton of suggestions from you guys over on my Instagram, which I never post on, but I do go on there and I lurk sometimes. So thank you for anyone who submitted requests for that video, and I will eventually get around to filming that. I need to go through like every book I've ever read and try to put some recommendations together, so that'll take some time. I have another video series idea that I want to try, but I need to kind of do a workshop of it. I need to figure out if the idea is going to work. So the first video might just be a trial of it, and then if it works, I'll make it a series. But it is going to be called The Cover Conspiracy, and it is going to feature a corkboard with string. That's the only hint I'm going to give you at this point, so stay tuned for that at some point in the future. I need to acquire a corkboard. And we have reached the end of the questions, so thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed my answers for this mid-year freakout tag. I didn't answer some of the questions from last year, like newest fictional crush or favorite character, because I always have a really hard time answering those, especially the crush, because I didn't really read a lot of romance this year. Let me know in the comments down below what was your best book that you read this year so far, and please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It means a lot to me that you're here. If you're not feeling chatty but you want to let me know that you were here, drop a pride flag in the comments, because it is still June as I'm filming this, and as far as I'm concerned, pride is all year. I just read queer all the year. All the year. Yep. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.